This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John McEnroe. Joining me, as always, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Fresh off a great trip to Nashville, country superstar. Adam checking out potential new career. I think Adam always wanted to don that country hat, the boots, and to handle his business, baby. What's
I'll
happening,
tell you this much. I look damn fine in an old school Western hat. I thought I'd look like a clown show, but my buddy has one. I put it on and I was like, I look good. And then when we were down there in Nashville, I looked at Alyssa and I was like, hey, I got to get one of those. And she was like, are you serious? I was like, hell yeah, I'm serious. I look good in it. So I look good in some cowboy boots and I look good in a cowboy hat. So just saying, man.
Nashville is a town that everybody raves about. People go down there and they have a good old time. 9-hour drive. So you said it's all worth it, huh? You graded an A. I have to basically mortgage my house to go there, but he said it's a good time.
Look, it is expensive. It's very expensive. It was more money than I thought it was going to be, but it was actually about an 8.5-hour drive. And it wasn't like the drive's not bad at all. Drive's pretty legit. It does take a while. Like I probably won't ever do an 8.5-hour drive again. I'd probably just fly, but it was so much fun. There's so much to do there. We went only for 3 days, right? We went Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and then we came home Monday morning. So we didn't even get really a full 3 days. There's so much stuff to do. If you're going to go, you need to take at least a week. And like I said, maybe mortgage your new house that you just got or dip into that SI fund that you got going on. One or the other. But it is pricey. But honestly, dude, there's so much to do. Broadway is incredible. We did Broadway Friday night. And the goal was to basically, you got to remember too, there's an hour time difference. You cross over into the central time zone. So we got up extra early, got there. The goal was to stay up till at least 11, going to as many bars as we possibly could, having a drink at every bar we went to, and watching live music. We ended up making it till about 12:30. That night, I ended up throwing up like 5 times. I ended up throwing up so hard I broke blood vessels in my forehead. That's how wasty pants I was. It was a great time, though. It was so much fun. Like, if you get a chance, you need to go.
Holy cow. What were you drinking? Whiskeys? Hitting the whiskeys pretty hard?
Yeah, a lot of whiskey. It was a lot of whiskey that first night, and then I switched to some gins later on in the trip. Let's put it this way. We probably started at about 5:30. Like I said, we went till probably about 12:30, so that's a solid 7 hours of drinking. And we ate right around 5:30, 6 o'clock. So not a lot of food in the belly, and a lot of drinks went down that night. And it was a lot of whiskey. It was good though. It was good.
A+ trip. Love to hear about it. Oh man, good times. Well, half of the city of Detroit was drunk by 2:30 on Sunday because of the fact it was such a boring offensive game.
I watched it. It was because on Sunday we ended up going bar hopping, checking out all kinds of other little bars in a different part, like a different district of Nashville. So I watched it. It was brutal. Going into every bar, just being embarrassed, being like, can you guys put the Lions game on, please? Thank you. Appreciate it. It was brutal. So I made friends with a Chicago Bears fan. That was cool. Look, this is something I wanted to tell you too. Bills fans, bro. Bills fans travel, and they travel hard. Showed up Friday. Bills fans were everywhere. Everywhere. Some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your entire life, too. They were absolutely incredible. Everywhere you went, because they were there for the Monday night game, which I'm sad I didn't get to go to the Monday night game. But, dude, Bills fans travel deep. Anyways, made friends with a Chicago Bears fan. He was pretty cool. He was a bartender. He was nice. But, yes, it was sad watching that game. It was. I was drunk, too.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was just one of those games where, at least for the first half, you were in it defensively. You were playing well. You were not giving up chunk yards to Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow didn't look like the worldly quarterback, but then all of a sudden you just saw that our offense is just inept at the highest level. They couldn't do nothing. How surprised were you at the offense because of the fact that the offense couldn't move the football, couldn't do nothing? Jared Goff played his worst game, and it was just really an embarrassing performance in front of your home fans. the fans were trying so hard. It was so sad. They were so desperate to want to cheer, but unfortunately, the Lions offense did nothing at all to give them any reason for hope. It was one of their worst performances, especially because when you start the game on offense, I tweeted it on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. That's scripted. That's the stuff that you're supposed to have down packed over practice. And they started the game offensively with 2 penalties and a missed assignment on Hawkinson and Sewell and a mistake. And so right away the tone was set, and it was so embarrassing, so lackluster. And I think just after 6 games falling to 0-6, and I really think because of the fact many people maybe had the assumption that they could win, that they could perform and have an opportunity to play well against the Bengals, to not have it go down, I think really pissed off Lions fans, and Lions fans have given up already on Jared Goff. His time in Motown, right now, his seat is the hottest among anybody in the city of Detroit.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. Like, watching that game was the equivalent of watching a one-legged cat trying to bury a turd on a frozen pond. You know, like, you just wanted to go out there and try to help them. It was so sad watching just the offensive effort. Like you said, your first couple plays, when you start the game, they're scripted. You, like, go over them and practice. You basically start practice that way, you end practice that way, and you run through these things. Like, your first 12 to 15 plays are always pre-planned. It's what's going to help put you in a position to put points up quickly. And this team comes out with penalty, missed assignment. Like, wait, what? Are you guys not paying attention? It was ungodly to watch this performance. Like, it was an absolute dumpster fire. It's one of those things where I don't know who you kind of point the finger at. Like, who do you blame? Do you blame the coaching staff? Do you blame the offense as a whole? Do you blame the offensive line? Do you blame T.J. Hawkinson? Do you blame Jared Goff? Do you blame the wide receivers? I mean, in my estimation, watching this game unfold, it's squarely on the players just not being able to execute and putting yourselves in bad spots. This is the thing. Jared Goff, not a very good quarterback, right? He's a guy who I think we're all a little bit taken aback by how bad he really is. I think we all kind of thought this guy would be able to, I don't know, give you something, give you anything. I don't think any of us thought he would be QB 32. Turns out he is QB 32. Maybe he's QB 34. I'm not really sure. There might be a backup on another team that you would take in front of Jared Goff. I think we all kind of hoped that he would be somewhere right around QB 20. And what you're getting here is not good enough play from the quarterback, but also the team around him is not helping him. He's a guy who has to start on time, and by start on time, that means first down, you've got to pick up yards. You got to put him in a 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6, a second plus. You know, you can't have him basically going 2nd and 15. You can't have him going 2nd and 10. You have to start on time with him as your quarterback. It's the only thing that gets this offense going. And we've talked about his ability to pass the ball and how far he can move it beyond the line of scrimmage. He's carrying, I think it's like a 3-yard average for his air yards. Like, he's the worst in the league at throwing the football. So, with all that being said, as far as your offensive coordinator goes, you got to put him in a better spot. You got to really help insulate this guy. And you've got to have bubble screens. You've got to have the ability to have your tight end get separation and have a safe pass. Like, you can't have a pass where your tight end's going across the middle and there's possibly 2 or 3 defenders kind of clogging that up. Your tight end should basically be doing curl routes and routes out into the flat, and then get the ball to him and let him pick up some yards. It's just the way that this offense is situated with the quarterback, and a lot of it's going to fall squarely on Jared Goff's shoulders. And look, I listened to Jared Goff's post-game. I listened to Jared Goff during the week. I listened to a lot of him. He seems like he's a really nice guy. Like, he seems like he's like the guy you want your sister to date. That's what he comes across as. Like, he's a really nice, genuine guy. All that being said, he's not able to cut it on the field. And you see that. So, you gotta help protect him. You gotta help insulate him, because who's your other option? David Blau? Like, that's not realistic. David Blau is not any better. So, you've got to figure out a way to help get this offense going quickly. You've got to figure out a way to get this offense going on time. And if that's just guys not committing penalties, if that's guys just doing their job and taking care of their assignments, then that's what it's got to be. And this team has a razor-thin margin of error. And yet, every week, these guys come out and they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. Like, how many gunshot wounds do you need in your foot? before you kind of figure it all out. You know, your quarterback's not great. You got a decent running game. Your offensive line's in tatters. You don't have any wide receivers. So you guys got to come out and you have to play exceptionally smart football. And these guys just aren't doing it. And look, I don't know where you want to go as far as who you want to blame for this, but I'm lumping it squarely on the players.
Yeah, it was tough because of the fact that they had no juice. It was different, and that's why Dan Campbell was so angry.
Flat.
He started flat. They were angry. They were, they just. It's unfortunate because Dan Campbell said he never really thought that the Bengals were really a 34-11 victory better than the Lions, and it made absolute sense. That's what was so disheartening was the fact that you practiced all week and the execution was bad. But it happens. I think every year we've seen it. You could chalk it up to a dud. And it's just unfortunate it happened in a game where you could have won. I think that's what's the most unfortunate about this situation was the Lions could have seriously had an opportunity to win the game. But I want to ask this because this was the question I had asked to Dan Campbell following the game, following the loss. It was 10-0. You had saw that the offense wasn't moving. Should he have benched Jared Goff for just a series or two, kind of maybe let him sit back and observe a little bit, get a little sense of what's going on? Maybe just a series or two. You probably were going to be down 17-0 anyway. Do you think that maybe some momentum could have been gained by benching Goff? Because he just told me no, it wasn't going to happen. And the reporters all peppered him about Goff, and Goff is not going to hit the bench anytime soon unless he gets hurt. So David Blau is not going to have really an opportunity to get the job. Do you think just maybe some momentum could have been gained by having Blau out there? It stunk because the Bengals got the ball back and immediately took it down the field and made it 17-0. So it makes it kind of a moot point. But I think that coming out after that, Goff wasn't the answer. So I would not have had a problem if Goff would have sat for a series or two. You don't maybe take him out for the game, but you just take him out for a series, let him rest, let him maybe see something defensively that maybe one or two things. I just don't think that Goff deserves to have the starting job locked up 100% without any competition. I know Blau is not really serious, a competitor to take his job, but at the same time, I don't think that Goff should have a free pass to have that seat locked up.
I agree with you. You shouldn't have a free pass, but I don't think you pull him out for a series in the middle of a game. And I don't know if David Blau gives you your best option to try to win a football game. You have to remember, even though they're down 20 some odd points, they're still trying to win that game. Whether it's a shot in the dark or they're actually in that ball game and able to put points on the board. I don't think you pull Goff to sit him for a series, especially because I feel like that'd almost be detrimental to his psyche.
His confidence.
Yeah, it's like at that point you kind of put him back, and then you got to like try to build him all the way back up again, and that just seems like you're almost like as a head coach at that point you're shooting yourself in the foot because you just took your quarterback and you said, hey, look, all this is your fault. Sit over here, think about it for a series, and then we're going to put you back in. And at that point, he's like, oh man, I'm really bad at everything that's going on here. I don't think you do that. I think and on top of that, you almost discredit him. And look, I think that locker room understands what's going on here. I think that locker room realizes what they have for a quarterback. I think that offense realizes what they have for an offense. And I think the writing's on the wall. At some point, this team has to move on from Jared Goff. I don't think it's this season, though. And I don't think it's with a guy like David Blau. I think that there's creative ways you can get in trading for a possible quarterback. There's guys like Deshaun Watson, who I don't think the Lions would touch with a 10-foot pole. Tua seems to be a guy who is being hotly talked about as far as a potential option to be traded. You also have draft capital. And look, we've touched on it. The quarterback class this year is not very good.
No,
they're absolutely horrible. That stock, I don't know if I've ever seen one plummet as hard. I don't know if I've ever seen one just basically bottom out as bad as the quarterback class's stock this year in this year's draft has just basically tanked. So you have draft capital, not for just this year. You have it for next year as well. So you're kind of anchored to Jared Goff for the rest of this year and for the next year. So what are you going to do? You end up playing him. You hope for the best. And look, he's going to help take care of your draft status. If you're worried about where this team's going to end up drafting, he's going to help you out. Like he's going to help you draft in the top 5. So I would not bench him. And I'm at the kind of the point where this is almost what it is. Unless this team's going to do something and get creative, unless the general manager is going to go out and pull off some type of a trade maneuver where he's going to get possibly a future quarterback in here, because that's really what it comes down to, right? Like you're basically playing with a seat warmer, and you've got a backup. You don't really have that quarterback of the future, and I think that's why Detroit fans are so upset. You know, you don't have that guy who's supposed to possibly come in and compete for the job or take the job over from Jared Goff. Like, that guy's not David Blau. So what do you have here? You've got a lot of anger, you got a lot of vitriol, and everybody wants Jared Goff basically banished to the locker room or benched, but you don't have a guy to necessarily take his place. You don't have a better option. This rebuild is just getting going, you know? It is one of those things where unfortunately, you have to play 17 games before you can really kind of kick this thing into a little bit of an overdrive. You know, I don't know where you're at with it, but I think they should hold off on drafting a quarterback next year. I just don't think, unless somebody comes out later on in this college football season, or unless there's a possible trade candidate or possibility of a trade, I don't think this team's going to be switching their quarterback room around a whole bunch. And I think they're kind of stuck with Jared Goff, and that sucks, but that's what it is.
And so what you got to do, you got to look at the numbers. The numbers say that the offense is better when Jamal Williams is out there. They get more yards, and they're more explosive when Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift are out there together. So you got to see maybe more of that, a lot more creativity, and I think you just have to kind of roll with it. And it is what it is. I think when Dan Campbell comes out and says, we try to be creative, but there's mistakes, it just basically means the talent's not good enough to execute. Mm-hmm. So what you're trying to do is just to see, okay, maybe potentially you've now added a silver lining in that maybe cornerback Jerry Jacobs is something that you can develop. I think that only giving up 2 bombs to Jamar Chase could be considered a moral victory. You know, you didn't get thoroughly dominated, you know, and it's unfortunate though because of the fact that Chris Evans and Joe Mixon were able to also have their way with your defense. But I think you're starting to potentially find at least 10 guys that you're going to roll with next year. And I think with Jared Goff, you just got to, like I've always said, we just got to tighten the reins and just continue to let him throw it 3 yards and try to find ways to move the football with TJ Hawkinson, find ways to kind of regroup a little bit and play with a lead. Maybe
doesn't it seem like the coaching staff, whether it's Dan Campbell, whether it's the head coach, offensive coordinator, and Jared Goff all sitting around in a room, and they're basically like, look, Anthony Lynn looks at Dan Campbell looks at Anthony Lynn, they both look at Jared Goff, and they're just like, hey,
we're fucked.
We know. We don't need you to win. We don't need you to go out and win the game for us. We just need you not to lose it. We need you to just manage the game for us. We've got guys like DeAndre Smith, Jamal Williams. We've got a guy like TJ Hawkinson. We need you to get the ball in their hands and let them take over the game. You need to be that steadying piece. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to play outside of your scope, and just try to maybe dial things back for him a little bit, because it's clear as day. This just isn't going to work.
Right.
And I don't know if it's necessarily Jared Goff's fault or if it's just kind of the position he's put in because of the talent that's around him, but it's pretty blatant and clear. His time is running up here, and he's as soon as they find another quarterback to move on to from him, he will be banished to the bench, and that's just kind of what it is. So
with that said, I think the next opportunity maybe to get a competitive game is the Eagles game, because nobody thinks that you're going to go out to Los Angeles and get a W. But is there a potential for this team to go 0-17? I know Vito wrote about it in a column for SIL Lions, but we joke about it, we make reference to it, but this kind of team has the makings of a team that might not get a W at all this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly possible that they go 0-17 because just the makeup is so bad. The Eagles game looks like it might be obtainable if the team doesn't shoot itself in the foot, but like even the Eagles have talent, right? Like Jalen Hurts, whatever you want to say about him, he's mobile. He's an okay quarterback. They have some wide receivers there. They've got a pretty decent tight end, and when that defense wants to play, it's okay. So, like the Eagles game looks like that could possibly be a win. after that, man, I don't know. Like, I think we all thought that the Falcons game would be a win. I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Right.
You know?
They're going to develop.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you even look at the Seahawks game, right? If Russell Wilson doesn't come back and you still have numbnuts out there.
Geno Smith.
Yes, Geno Smith, thanks. Geno Smith doing all Geno Smith things, or you got DK Metcalf trying to pick up extra yards instead of just running out of bounds. Like, I don't know. I don't think you win that game either, you know? And it's like, you've already seen what happened against Minnesota. Minnesota beat you. The Bears beat you. I don't know if it makes a difference if those games are at home. Those games were lost by, the Vikings game was lost by a field goal. The Bears game, they beat you by 10. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. This team is so damn bad right now. Like, there's not really a silver lining that you can point to where you're like, hey, that looks good. Or, hey, that guy's going to be a dude in a year and a half. Like, I don't know if we have that. Like, we were all pretty high on Penny Sewell the first 2 games. We're now 6 games in, and he's had a pretty rough 4-game stretch here. You know, and I don't think it gets any better this week against the Rams. I mean, at this point, I feel like Matt Stafford in that Rams team, they're just going to jail sex the Lions. I was telling Alyssa, I said, hey, don't be surprised if Matt Stafford hangs 6 touchdowns on the Lions next week. And she's like, oh, they're playing the Lions next week? I was like, yeah, the Lions secondary sucks. The defense, like you said, it kind of kept them in there for a half, maybe 3 quarters, but it broke down because they got tired. Because that offense can't do anything. You're going to go up against Aaron Donald? Come on, bro. Aaron Donald's about to feast on Jared Goff all day long. Look, just expect jail sexing this week.
Yeah, you could see Matthew Stafford be out of the game by halftime. You know what I mean? It could be a 45-0 situation right away if the Rams really want to pile on and Matthew Stafford takes this game as seriously as people are expecting. So it's a tough situation. Everybody's looking at it all the way across the board. And here's what's more deflating to me, okay? So Dan Campbell's fiery post-game, and he's like, we didn't compete. We didn't do what we were supposed to do. So one week he's crying. The next week he's pissed off and trying to figure stuff out. And he comes out and he's like, we might have to look at making some changes all across the board. And so then you start hearing rumors, oh, maybe potentially the Lions could go out and trade for a wide receiver. Maybe they'll go out and get something else. And they make their wide receiver transaction. And do you know what your Lions team does for you, the great city of Detroit? Do you know what they did? They brought up Geronimo Allison. If that's not the biggest FU into the crowd, that just would tell me right there I'm going to lower my price on StubHub for all the games so that the opposing fans can come. Geronimo Allison is your change? That's your shakeup? Get out of here with that. And so don't say it. Don't say you're going to shake up the roster. You already had Geronimo Allison. You just throw out Trinity Benson. I mean, you deactivate him. What kind of message does that send to your fan base when you traded a draft pick for Trinity Benson? He's deactivated. What does that say? He couldn't pick up your offense in a month? That's really bad because you invested in him. Even though, yeah, you got a pick back, you invested capital in Trinity Benson. He can't even get on the field. That's a huge red flag.
Dude, when the rumor came out that the Lions were looking at possibly trading for a wide receiver, I was like, please, God, no. Like, you've already done it once with Trinity Benson, and it hasn't worked out. I'm not saying just because it doesn't work out this one time that you shouldn't do it or at least look into it, but no. Because what are you going to get? Like, at this point, the season's underway. Anybody who's worth a damn, nobody's giving them up. And they're not giving them up for any type of draft capital that you really want to part with. Like, nobody's giving up a first or a second or a third, even a 4th round pick. You know, like those picks, those guys are expected to be starters and at least rotational guys. So I get giving up the 5th round pick and giving up the 7th round pick. 7th round pick's a shot in the dark. 5th round pick you expect some production from, but it's kind of hit or miss. It's like 50-50. In return, you get Trinity Benson, who was a practice squad player, who is still a practice squad player, and you get a possible 6th round. And I was just like, don't do it again. Like, just don't. This is what it is. This is where we're at. Like, you know what pisses me off? You see other teams do this all the time. We talk about this every year. This is something that just bothers me because the Lions haven't been able to figure it out or been able to do it. Other teams go out and they just basically grab guys off couches. Like, hey, want to come play? And they're like, yeah, tired of delivering pizzas. And they kept themselves in shape. They show up and they contribute. Lions haven't been able to do that. Like, go find a wide receiver. Like, I feel like just about any guy who played at a high level in college is a possible candidate to come in and make a team, especially middle of the year when the team is struggling. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. I understand it is very difficult in the NFL. I understand the game moves very, very fast. I get all of that. But you've seen it with other guys. You've seen it with other players. They step in and they're able to make an impact. The Lions have never been able to do that. Like, go grab a guy off a couch and just, like, throw him in your lineup, and he produces. Lions can't do that, and I don't know why. It bothers me so much that they're not able to do that.
Yeah, now the Lions kickers that get sent off to the league, they go off to London with Jacksonville and get W's.
Yeah.
So now the Lions are kicker factories, where all the Lions that tried out this year have made one winning kicker or another. Matthew Wright and Randy Bullock have got game-winning kicks on their resume this year. So it's funny all the way around what's going on. And I think what the Lions have to do is they just have to be more transparent in regards to this rebuild. Say, look, victories might be tough to come by. We're trying to develop and things like that, but we just have to figure out ways to execute at a higher level. And they just got to stop saying that we're going to look at drastic changes, because they're not. They can't. Their drastic changes is to cut a guy from the practice squad in Javon McKinley for the 15th time and then bring him back. That's their drastic change. Geronimo Allison. I mean, come on, dude. That's not what we're looking for. And what's disappointing is on the offensive side, Amon-Ra St. Brown has yet to gain a foothold. T.J. Hawkinson has taken a step backwards. He's been hurt, and he's been targeted by opposing defenses, so he hasn't been productive. It's just been disappointing because the guys that you would expect, Swift, Williams, Hawkinson, Goff, all could do a little bit more to help this offense. And so it's just really a tough situation. And I'm not down with bringing in Tua, not down with bringing in Deshaun Watson. It's just really tough. Would you not be interested at least in possibly bringing in Tua? Look, I don't want Deshaun Watson. As good as Deshaun Watson is, there's no guarantee that he doesn't go to jail for a very long time. So If you're a team that is looking at trading for him, that is a huge risk. And I don't mind a little bit of risk with this rebuild. I don't. But I'm not about to mortgage my future on possibly getting a guy who might be locked up for quite an extended period of time. Now, Tua, on the other hand, look, I was the biggest proponent of drafting Tua a year ago, 2 years ago. He was the guy who I thought they should have had. They should have took. I didn't think they should have took Okudah, all right? And I still think that they should have passed on Okudah. And I think in time, I'll be proved 100% right on that. Now, in time, I might not be proven right on Tua Tagovailoa. It might have been Justin Herbert who was the guy that they should have took, and currently it looks like that's the case, and I'm okay with that. But Tua's a guy who, if he's going to get moved, and you're Dan Campbell, and you're the general manager of the Detroit Lions, and you guys are sitting around the room, and you're kind of discussing possible options, and it comes up that Tua might become available. How do you not take that risk? And I ask that question, and I ask it out loud because I look at what you have for this team, right? Right now, your future is really what? You don't have that quarterback who's going to help you make that transition. Jared Goff is what Jared Goff is going to be. Now, you add some better pieces around him, maybe he looks a little bit better. But Jared Goff is never going to really be anything other than maybe at best a top 15 quarterback. Okay? Maybe at best. Probably less than that. Actually, I take that back. Jared Goff will never be any more than probably a top 25 quarterback. Okay? Won't be anything better than, I should say, a bottom 20. How do I want to phrase this? He'll be like a bottom 7 quarterback. That's what I mean to say here. Let me work through this out loud. The word you're looking for.
As you can tell, it's all off the cuff here.
Yeah, what you're looking for, bottom tier.
Yes, he is a bottom tier quarterback. He'll never be anything more. Now, Tua hasn't looked good. Like, Tua has not looked great in his stint in Miami. Played a couple of games last year, basically coming off that hip injury. I felt like they might have rushed him a little bit because they wanted to see what they had with him. Comes back this year, looks okay, gets hurt, comes back. I thought he played a really good game in London this past weekend. Okay, I watched all of that game for reasons that kind of irritate me, but whatever. I watched most of that game. depending on what the price is, I don't see a problem with taking a risk on that guy. He doesn't cost you anything because he's still on his rookie deal. All of his guaranteed money has essentially been paid with his signing contract. So you're getting him for pennies on the dollar. It's not like it's going to cut into your salary cap that much. Jared Goff is here regardless, right? So if Tua comes in and turns out Tua needs a little bit more time to maybe rehab and get healthy before he's 100%, okay, fine. He can sit behind Goff. You still have Goff. It's fine. You can then, as soon as he gets healthy, put him out there, see what you have. Maybe you strike lightning in a bottle, and maybe Tua is that guy. Maybe he's just a little bit delayed in his development. Maybe he needs that extra year, and next thing you know, he lights it up. It doesn't hurt because by the time Jared Goff's contract's coming off the books, you can then look to possibly sign Tua, or you can just move on from him because it'll put you in line to draft a real quarterback out of school. In my estimation, it works out perfect. Depending on what they ask for. And for me, I'm willing to give a second-round pick if that's what they want. You know, I mean, I would prefer it be a third or a fourth, but I'm willing to give you a second. Shoot, do you realize? I know you do. We have 2 first-round picks this year.
Yes.
What the hell? If they wanted the Rams' first-round pick, give it to them. You're still drafting number 1, possibly number 2 this year. Who the hell cares?
You're setting up the Lions to be bust you with Penei Sewell, Jeff Okudah, Tua, and Jared Goff. I mean, the bust Hall of Fame with the Detroit Lions. It just doesn't seem like that's the case. I feel like they're going to go with the quarterback from college, and they're going to wait until following the 2022 season. I think that this year they can do an evaluation. You can still get a quarterback in the 4th and 5th round, potentially speaking, or you make do with Jared Goff and you actually surround him with a wide receiver that potentially, if you overcorrect, you get him a Jamar Chase and a Kenny Galladay, a big guy and a speedy guy, and you just apologize for letting him go through this because there's no way that Brad Holmes doesn't owe Jared Goff a huge favor because he's going to put a quarterback that was used to winning on a team that has wide receivers that are the bottom of the barrel, bottom tier wide receivers. So I still believe that GM Brad Holmes is really invested in Jared Goff. And even though the film doesn't lie, I think that they're going to have to, really acknowledge the fact that the team just wasn't good enough to compete this year. So we'll see. We still have a lot more information that we don't know yet regarding the makeup of the team after this year. So I'm fascinated to see what it does look like. But, man, cause this year is really hard. It's hard. 6 games is about the patience level, I think, of the fans to not have a victory. The only winless team in the National Football League, your Detroit Lions. And we got a game that's going to be really tough. And there's not too, like everything that you suggest, you bring Tua here with a banged up offensive line. You think that's going to turn it around? He's going to get hurt within 20 plays. I
think you add the quarterback that might be your future. And again, you're not attached to him because he's still on his rookie deal. So you can let him go. I think that it's worth a shot because what do you have right now? You don't have anything right now. If anything, he's worth a shot. And I think for the fans, I don't know if 6 games is the cutoff, but it was the way that they played their 6th game after competing in every other game that they've played this year. They had 0 compete level that game. And I think that was what was most disheartening, and I think that was what was most frustrating for Detroit fans because these guys did not show up at all on Sunday. Not one of them. A lot of times when Matt Stafford was here, these guys would show up late, they would show up flat, they wouldn't look like themselves. But Matt Stafford somehow figured out a way to will them to a win and get them going. This team had absolutely zero on Sunday. And there's not one guy on this team. There's not that one transitional piece who can help lift everybody else up because this team's just not that good. And that's what kind of sucks. I do, however, want to check in on you. I want to make sure you're doing okay. Because if you are doing anything like what the Lions did on Sunday, I'm nervous about you, and I got to make sure you're not on suicide watch. There's been a ton of rumors. There's been a ton of talk. All this stuff swirling around the Michigan State head coach, Mel Tucker. LSU is going to part ways with Ed Orgeron, and Mel Tucker has some ties to LSU. Mel Tucker's the hot new name in coaching circles because of everything he's done in Michigan State. And basically, LSU comes out and says, hey, we're parting ways with Ed Ogeron. We'll be looking for a new head coach at the end of this year, yada, 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 such and such and such. And Mel Tucker's name's on that list because he's got connections. There's a lot of people at LSU who really like Mel Tucker. And he's somewhere down the list. He's not number 1, not number 2. I don't even know if he was in the top 5, but he's on the list. Basically 24 hours go by. Next thing you know, all the betting sites have Mel Tucker as the number 2 favorite to get the LSU job, which kind of ratchets it up some of that heat and makes you start scratching your head like, is Mel Tucker going to leave? Reminder, he left Colorado after being there for only 1 year. He does tend to bounce around a little bit. So does this have you nervous? Are you worried? Are you worried that the guy who has helped craft and mold MSU into, we'll just give a little bit of a little inkling into what's going to be happening next week when we start talking MSU or MSU U of M. I think MSU might beat Michigan. I think MSU is a really good program. I think what Mel Tucker has done in a very short amount of time is incredible to watch. If I was a Michigan State fan, I'd be nervous. Are you nervous?
No, not for Mel Tucker to go to LSU. Yeah, they can throw the big dollars around. Yeah, they can potentially do what they need to do to potentially have, a nice recruiting pitch saying, oh, the last 3 coaches that we've hired in terms of coaches that we brought here have won the national title. But I think what Mel Tucker's going to see is that this is great. I can leverage my situation. He's going to earn a fat payday. And here's the best part, cuz did you know that Michigan State not only has 1 billionaire that loves athletics, they got 2 billionaires that don't have problems. Matt Ishbia just dropped 36 or $39 million on an athletic practice facility for the Michigan State football team. This is amazing. So all it is that Ishbia's got to hit up his boy Dan Gilbert and be like, look, 4 from you, 4 from me, another 8 million, boom.
Those guys hate each other, by the way.
I know they do. So, but they're competing with each other in terms of how much they want to donate to Michigan State. My God. It's hilarious. Oh, look, right now, Tom Izzo's calling Matt Ishbia trying to hit him up. Oh, look, right now, it's Mel Tucker again. And, when you open up your checkbook, people start calling you. I've come to realize. And what's fascinating is, though, I think that Mel Tucker wants to prove that he can have success. It's a lot easier, I think, to go up against Ohio State and Michigan than it would be against Alabama. My prediction is that Mel Tucker stays 3-4 years. He builds up Michigan State, maybe gets to 1 Big Ten championship, maybe has an opportunity at a playoff if he can get that stud quarterback and build up that defense. I think that he's going to even supersede LSU. I think that he's probably next in line right now. Remember, Mel Tucker followed Nick Saban 3 different times to the places he was at. So I think that if Mel Tucker can reach the ultimate prize, he can build his throne at Alabama. And then you're set to go, and you have an opportunity to get the best recruits. You have everything set up for you. They will literally hand you whatever you want. They'll print you money. Or if it's, I don't see Mel Tucker staying to be a lifer. I hope he sets his roots and can build a nice coaching tree that can carry on his legacy. I see him potentially, if it's not LSU, if it's not Alabama, I could also see him coach in the National Football League because that's where he's also had a lot of experience. And that job is a lot easier for older individuals than it is to potentially grind and recruit. But he's done a great job. Am I nervous?
Fantastic
Yes.
job.
I'm nervous because Nick Saban did this. This was something that we started to see with, prominent coaches at Michigan State. When they've had success, everybody wants to poach them. And I hate to kind of view Michigan State as that job where we build up coaches and they go on and have success elsewhere. But, maybe let's see, does Michigan State protect their own and pony up the money? Because I'm starting to think that I wouldn't be totally against Mel Tucker making $8-9 million a year. Match it. If Nick Saban's making 9, you pay Mel Tucker 9. It's not a big problem. I think to take Michigan State to 7-0, cause the over-under, we could have made a fortune. The over-under was 4.
Yeah.
Over-under was 4 this year. And your defense isn't even that great. You got Panasuk, who's doing some great things on defense, but that's it. It's basically an unheralded defense, but collectively, this is what good coaching looks like and solid talent on offense that's explosive. So I'm very excited. It's getting closer to October 30th, and the day's going to come. So please, Michigan, hold up your end of the bargain. But I wouldn't mind if Michigan lost to Northwestern. That would be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Michigan's going to handle their business. The bye week, I'm fascinated to see how it'll affect Michigan State. Do they come out rusty? But I think it's going to help. I think the bye week is going to be the factor here in that Michigan State could go that extra mile because it's going to be brutal. The trenches, you're going to see cracked helmets. You're going to see people on the ground. You're going to see a bunch of hitting going on at East Lansing. And even though it's a noon start, I know people are grumpy. For old geezer like me, I'm pretty happy about it. I'll get to see you either in a really celebratory mood or really in a bad mood. So we'll see. Oh, yeah, sad mood. We'll see how that plays out, but I'm not nervous. I think that it's a compliment to Michigan State to have the likes of LSU looking at your guy. That's awesome, bro. 7-0. Even though the game sucked against Indiana, it was at least a game in which you left with a W. And so with that said, all is good in Sparty land, just like all is good with the Detroit Sports Podcast. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure if you've agreed or disagreed, if you've got a different plan, if you think we're being a little too harsh on the Lions, let us know at Detroit Podcast. Anywhere you enjoy your favorite podcast, make sure you subscribe to the Detroit Sports Podcast. Get in the mix. The most interactive Detroit Sports Twitter and social media account. We love reading your guys' banter. Make sure, and if you're just a casual observer, you don't want to listen to the podcast, follow our Twitter account. It's funny, it's entertaining, it's therapeutic, all at the same time in the world of Detroit sports. And I'm grateful to be able to podcast with my cousin Adam, but podcasting time is now over. We'll hit you guys next week for another fine episode of Doc and Jock. Thanks, cuz. I really appreciate it.